Hard sports all plays. Yeah. Hard sports all plays. Hard sports all plays. 365, we making the plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're eye in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics never the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace up the field, so tie the laces. Hard sports all plays. Network. Hard sports all plays. Network. We on top of our game. Hard sports all plays. Hard sports all plays.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to A Hardball Life. My name is Rich Daniels. Joining me tonight, Joe Traub, and you get the hardball junkies here tonight, the hardball lifers. That's what we do, to the point where we have in-depth discussions about how to tie your shoes in rookie ball. But none of that right now, because we are talking Major League Baseball tonight and a little minor league baseball. We're going to talk about some of the experimental rules that have been instituted in the minor leagues for this season. But first off, we are talking bullpens. Last week it was the pitching rotations. Now it's going to be the bullpens. Joe, man, I'm telling you, good to see you, my friend. And you're going to start us off with we're going to go in reverse order this week, right?
Yeah, totally. And thanks again, Rich, for bringing me on this Sunday night. And boy, bullpens, what a great topic. Because I have to say, to get ready for the 2021 season, I've been going back and rewatching the 2020 World Series. And last night I actually watched Game 4 between the Dodgers and Rays, which, as we all know, boy, the bullpens in that game, both sides, just a never ending. It was absolutely insane the way that game ended. I'll never forget it, with Brett Phillips, that walk-off off Kenley Jansen. But as you mentioned, Rich, we are going in reverse order, make it a little bit more fun for the listeners, I feel like. So instead of going 1 to 5 like we did rotations, going 5 to 1, kind of counting it down to the top spot. And my 5th best bullpen going into this 2021 season, got to go with the Chicago White Sox. I know I had the White Sox pitching rotation in my list as well. And, you know, they might not have a big name, like major names down there, but they have a few pretty good ones. And Garrett Crochet, of course, a rookie, was actually the first-round pick just 9 months ago in the draft. Didn't play in the minor leagues, of course. There was no minor league season in 2020. He was at their alternate site, and then they brought him up in September, and he pitched well down the stretch, even threw in one of the playoff games against the Oakland A's. Ended up having to come out due to injury, but kind of a triple-digit flamethrower rookie, that's going to kind of pique anyone's interest as a sensation. So I think Crochet, I mean, it could be argued that he might need to go down to the minor leagues for a little bit, but even if he does, I don't think it's going to be long, because that guy's a major league pitcher based on what I saw last September and October. Also, guys such as Aaron Bummer, really underrated. I think Bummer, you know, kind of a specialist guy, but I believe he signed an extension either right after his big league debut or shortly before he was like really established as part of their bullpen. And that's a big deal. So Bummer as well. And of course, Liam Hendriks. It's kind of funny. Liam Hendriks was the guy on the mound who ended the White Sox season back on October 1st. He got the save for the Oakland A's to earn that, to close out that 9th inning in that hard-fought series that the A's ended up winning 2-1. But Hendriks, a free agent, has switched sides. He's now going to be with the White Sox. And Hendriks, another guy who's a good story. He battled. He, you know, had to go down to the minor leagues several times when he didn't really want to, after he thought he was an established big league reliever. But he worked his way back. He was really good in Oakland. So Liam Hendriks closing out games there in Chicago. I think he's going to continue to do what he did in Oakland.
Yeah, the White Sox were definitely under consideration for me. Another guy for the White Sox is a guy who may be a bit of a major league journeyman, is Evan Marshall, but he's had a couple of good seasons pitching middle relief for the White Sox. One of those guys that gets them from the starters to the game enders. So you know, the White Sox were in my mind about all that. I was looking at them all and comparing them, and I had to go with another team at number 5 for me, which was the Washington Nationals. And for me, the signing of Brad Hand made a big difference there. And I don't know why people were down on Brad Hand. He led the major leagues in saves last year. He was in the top 5 in saves the year before with Cleveland. And the guy is just he just gets outs. He comes in and does the job with a low 2 ERA. He goes in there and gets it done. So you put him in place instead of the bullpen by committee they pretty much had there, or Daniel Hudson was closing sometimes. Okay, but you put a guy in there who's the ninth inning is his job, and that changes everything in the bullpen. Hudson now moves down to a setup role along with Will Harris. Those two guys, a couple of veterans. If they're your seventh and eighth innings, you're doing pretty good. They've also got a guy there who I think is going to break out this year. I'm looking for a big one, and that's Tanner Rainey. This dude throws hard. The only question is whether they're going to have him healthy or not. And so far in spring training, he's looking good. You're talking another guy who throws 100 miles an hour, and his strikeouts per nine is up around 12 or 13, which is crazy good. And this is a guy, when you've got those three veterans in place in the late innings, you can bring Tanner Rainey in anywhere from the fifth to the eighth in a position where, it might be a tight spot. You can have him come in and shut an inning down and then hand it over to those veterans to finish the ball game, each of them starting an inning. So I like that. They've got some other guys in there like Vander Suero, like McGowan, like Finnegan, other guys who do that middle relief role. And when you've got the other places in the bullpen, the Nationals have so many pitching prospects. 9 out of their top 10 pitching prospects are pitchers. And you got these young guys who are just not going to get any innings in the rotation. When you've got Strasburg, when you've got Scherzer, Corbin, Lester, there's just not going to be any innings in the starting rotation unless there's injuries. So these young guys like Fuentes and Adon and Romero and Bramer and Armenteros, the young kid came over from Houston. You got these guys who are going to be able to go in there and just get innings wherever they can. And I think that's going to be a big deal because any of these guys can come in early in a game and stretch it out for 3 or 4 innings and get to the veterans in that bullpen. So I like the veterans setup in the Nationals bullpen, plus all the young happening arms that are coming up through that system and are ready to go.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think it's easy to forget that the Nationals were the World Series champions the last time there was a full season played in Major League Baseball. A fun little note I do want to add about Armenteros. You mentioned he was in the Houston Astros organization. It was actually a game, or it was split up into 2 games that it turned out that you might have been at. It was a couple of years ago. Armenteros was pitching for AAA Fresno. They were the Astros affiliate at the time. Game got suspended due to rain in like the 3rd or 4th inning, picked up on their next visit to town about 7 weeks later. And he happened to be the guy on the mound when the game resumed. So he started that game too. And he ended up with like a 165 pitch complete game, 9-inning victory. It was crazy. It's one of those things you only see in the minor leagues, but I love it because only baseball, right?
Yeah, just odd stuff like that happens that, and we get to see it. We being minor league junkies working in the minor leagues, we get to see stuff like that all the time. So it's really good. So moving on to number 4 now. We got to keep moving tonight. My number 4 team, my number 4 bullpen is all about the veterans that have been brought in, because you just wonder, a lot of teams that are going, they put their young arms in the bullpen and let them go. But man, I'll tell you what, the Oakland A's have brought in a bunch of specialists. Trevor Rosenthal, they brought in. They brought in also Sergio Romo to be able to go out there. And Adam Kolarek is another guy that they brought in, got him from the Dodgers to bring him in. So this is added to a bullpen that already had probably the most underrated reliever in the last 3 years in the major leagues, and that's Jake Diekman, the left-hander for them. This guy gives up very few hits. He walks a few guys, because he throws really hard. He's got a lot of movement on his pitches, but the guy's strikeouts per nine is upper. It was at one point in the middle of the 2019 season, I think his strikeouts per nine were about 14, which is absolutely crazy good. But this guy's consistently there, and he's not even closing. He might be closing some to alternate with Rosenthal and things like that. But with this bullpen, with Rosenthal and Diekman and Romo and all these other guys, you have no idea who's going to close. You have no idea who you're going to see when. It's just a matter of, the way Bob Melvin wants to deploy those guys. Plus, you've got some good supporting guys like B.J. Wendelken. Everybody's looking for him to pitch a lot of leverage innings this year. Trevino's another guy that they've got in there. Also, Birch Smith is a guy who had a rough time in places like Milwaukee and Kansas City. He goes to Oakland, bam, he's clicking and he's throwing great in the bullpen. So I look for them, and a wild card in that bullpen for them could be A.J. Puck. If he's healthy, if he's able to bring it, that gives you a left-hander that throws really hard out of that bullpen. I'll give you two guys that could just scare you coming over from the left side in Oakland.
Well, I like it. And as we said last week, Rich, Oakland, just a place guys to go for a second or third chance, or kind of a redemption tour. And hey, they win a lot of baseball games. They have fun. There's no pressure there. So I think it's great to have Oakland in those rankings. For my fourth team in the bullpens, I'm going with the Milwaukee Brewers. And that might be a surprise to some, but you've got a couple of the best in the game. Of course, Josh Hader was as good as it gets for a couple of years. Kind of took a couple lumps back in 2020. More so struggled with his command than anything. He was still really tough to hit, save for maybe one or two outings where he blew up a bit. But you got to think Hader's going to bounce back. And also Devin Williams, the National League, the Rookie of the Year, reliever of the year in 2020. I think he only allowed one earned run. It was that screwball action that really just took Twitter and the internet by storm. That was fascinating. And yeah, I think Devin Williams is going to be due for another good year. And then you got guys that are kind of more role fillers like Brent Suter and Justin Topa, but also Drew Rasmussen's a fascinating name. Now, Rasmussen was brought up in 2020, had a rough time. He threw 100 miles an hour, but kind of didn't really know where the ball was going. And when he did, got hit around. But it's a full season now. You have a normal spring training, kind of work your load up. And I think Rasmussen could have some success blowing that triple-digit heater past guys. So, yeah, I think Milwaukee might be kind of a wild card, but they're kind of a sleeper team, I feel like, this year on all sides of the ball.
It would be kind of hard to disagree with you on that because over the winter, Milwaukee let go a couple of veteran guys out of that bullpen, and they did that to make room for these young guys coming in. So one thing I've learned working in minor league ball and being around it all the time is that there's always something somebody knows that I don't. And it's a good thing to pay attention to stuff like that. So, Williams is he's got the best backup action on a ball I've seen since Willie Hernandez back in the 80s for the Tigers. So yeah, the Brewers are another team that could come through. I didn't pick them because they don't have the established numbers or anything like that. But man, I'm not going to agree with you at all of those young arms coming in there to go along with Hader and Williams and Suter and those guys. So yeah, good pick on that one. All right, number 3 for me though, I'm going with the chalk, man. I'm taking the Dodgers. Number 3, that bullpen. And you talk about depth. And everyone wants to talk about, Kenley Jansen's not what he used to be, but he's still closing down games. He's still getting it done in a lot of ways. And yeah, he gave up the big hit in the World Series, but you know what? He's still Kenley Jansen, and I'll take 85% of Kenley Jansen over 100% of a lot of guys. Plus, you've got Blake Trinan, who can go in there and close games. David Price has taken all the pressure off of the pitching situation for the Dodgers by saying, hey, yeah, I'll go to the bullpen. I'll be happy to do that. He'll go in and he'll do whatever he needs because he understands the importance of the opportunity he's got with the Dodgers this year. So, the last thing they need him doing is whining about, what he's going to do or anything like that. He's pitched relief in the big leagues before, famously for the Rays when he came up and did extremely well in their first trip to postseason greatness. So I like them. But, you think about it. Brewster Gratterall, 100 miles an hour throwing there. Joe Kelly, throwing mid-90s. You've got Corey Knebel, one of the guys that Milwaukee let go. He's now a Dodger. There's another guy that throws 97. They're just guy after guy after guy. Bobby Canley's now there. Looks like he's going to be pretty healthy and be able to get in there and throw this year. And then Alexander, the left-hander, that's going to come in there. But really, they've got a bunch of guys. They don't have to play matchups because these guys can come in and get anybody out. And sure, Jansen may not be the man he once was, the unhittable guy. But, man, you look at the depth of that bullpen. Anybody coming out of that bullpen can get you 3 outs in no time.
Hey, well, the good thing is on this one, don't have to spend a lot of time going down my number 3 because I'm right there with you. I have the Dodgers as well. I do have a couple thoughts to add, though, about Kenley Jansen. Yeah, I do agree. It's been rough for him, but, he's still a pretty solid reliever and closer, and he can lock games down. But the thing that bothered me the most in Game 4 of the World Series wasn't so much that he gave up the hit to Brett Phillips. That happens. Legends are made in October, and you got to live with it. But the way was how he went about the play defensively after the hit, not coming to back up the play until it was too late when, Will Smith and Mac Muncy really could have used the help. So, yeah, that was a bit concerning when he didn't do that. He just kind of sulked to the plate and was like, oh, we lost. It's over. But this is actually the last time Jansen pitched because he didn't pitch in Games 5 or 6 from what I recall. But yeah, Blake Trinan down there, a good veteran reliever. He had a solid season, not great numbers, but I think he's going to continue to be a guy who's serviceable, can give you some innings. Corey Knebel, Bruce O'Gradivall, you mentioned his heat. And I'll have to tell this story another time when we have a time for it in another episode, but my good buddy Victor Gonzalez, what a sensation he became out of the Dodgers pen late in 2020. I'll just give it a brief tease. He struggled and he was back in rookie ball when I was working for Ogden in the Pioneer League in 2018. It was tough for him. It looked like it was the end of his career, but he just found it. Sometimes guys just get a second wind, and that's really what happened to his career. And he ended up being a key left-handed specialist out of the Dodgers bullpen. And you saw him making that catch on that line drive in the World Series where, the joke was the ball caught him. He didn't catch the ball, but he turned it into a double play, and then LeBron James was tweeting about it. But yeah, Victor Gonzalez, that's another good name in that Dodgers pen. And let's see how it continues to go for them, with the addition of Price, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I think what you got to look at is how strong these bullpens are. The teams that were shedding relievers, they're doing it for a reason, because they've got so many guys in there. I mean, relief pitching is at such a premium these days. You think about how bullpens are used now. So when somebody's letting relievers go and trading relievers away, like the Dodgers have in the last couple of years, you have to know they've got a lot of talent in that bullpen. So Gonzalez is a guy I forgot all about. And we want to remind everybody here on the Hardball Life, you got comments like our man John Suggs, going in there with some updates on other things that are going on there. Get us in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Just put your comment down, ask a question about a bullpen or anything else that you want to do. We'll get to it, and we'll be happy to have you on. Moving on, number 2, sir. Who do you got at number 2 for the bullpens in MLB?
Well, who was the last opponent the Dodgers played that wasn't a spring training game? That's right, the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Tampa Bay Rays are my number 2 bullpen. Now, I know that a lot of people might not agree with me if they only watch the postseason. And, I was kind of thinking on these lines too, like, man, they call this a stable of guys. These guys are just getting battered every night. But the truth is, you look at the guys such as Nick Anderson, Pete Fairbanks, Diego Castillo, and Aaron Loup. They've all been good for a couple of years, but they didn't really have the experience of pitching in postseason baseball, where it's pressure. Not to mention the 2020 postseason was different in that the ALDS and the ALCS, that was 5 games in 5 days and then 7 games in 7 days. There was no rest. There was no time for recovery. And the way Kevin Cash liked to lean on those guys because, I think I don't want to say it's a trust thing, it's just the way the organization works, that he knows what guys he wants to get. It's just based on their philosophy. But there was a time where their relievers were pitching more innings than their starters. And that's no knock against the starters because they had a pretty good rotation in 2020. But I think by the time they got to playing the Astros, and especially the Dodgers just a team that can wear you down so much. You saw guys like Anderson and Fairbanks just start to tire and not be able to get the outs like they normally did, because those are the guys they rode with during the regular season too. But I think a lot of those guys hopefully got the rest they needed this offseason, didn't really throw. I know it was just a 3-month season, but it was a sprint. All those games were meaningful, and they were basically 90 days of pressure-packed pitching for all those relievers. So, yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays, when they start up again in a few weeks with the regular season, I won't be surprised if Castillo and Fairbanks, Anderson, Loup, those guys, they come out throwing smoke again, throwing 100, and they're able to help that team win out a lot of close baseball games, a lot of low-scoring games, because that's the Ray way, right?
That's for sure. And Joe, you stole my thunder. I had the Tampa Bay Rays as the top bullpen in all of Major League Baseball, and the reason is the way that bullpen is used. Nick Anderson anywhere else would be a premier closer, and all he would ever do is pitch in the 9th inning. Okay, but for Kevin Cash and the Rays, the way they use him as the fireman. If they've got a rally going for the opposing team in the 6th, they'll bring in Nick Anderson and he'll close that down. The 8th inning, Nick Anderson will be in there, and that's what happened to him in the playoffs last year. Is he got worn out. He just plain got worn out. When you throw the ball the way he does, he's got one of the highest spin rates in baseball on that thing, and that can fatigue your arm. You need time off to be able to recover. You need a day. Even a day for a guy like him is a huge deal. But he was pitching 4 or 5 days in a row, and yeah, he's going to get hit. Even the best are going to get hit. That's for sure. But you talk about some of those guys also, like Ryan Sheriff, Chaz Rowe, Richards. Chris Mazza is coming down. There's a hard thrower from Boston they just got who's going to be able to come in there and throw. They just keep getting more and more and more of these guys. And guess who's waiting in the wings? Oh, well, Brent Honeywell,
Right.
he's healthy finally after 4 elbow operations. You've got McClanahan and McKay waiting for their shots. These are highly touted guys who really bring it. McClanahan, we got to see a little bit in the postseason last year. Didn't do so well, but man, did he show some stuff. And the most underrated member of the bullpen in Tampa Bay, if you ask me, is Ryan Yarbrough.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
he's usually the guy who comes in after an opener, and to be able to go in there and throw bulk innings, throw the second through the fifth or the second through the sixth. And this is a guy who just keeps winning games. I think he won 16 games in 2018 and 14 games in 2019. Last year, it was a weird. You can't take a lot of stock on last year. I mean, for individual guys, you just can't. But Ryan Yarbrough keeps coming out of that bullpen. He'll start a few games, maybe like 12 or 14 games in a year, but he'll also come in relief 25, 26 times in a season. And that's not easy to go back and forth between all that. And this guy just keeps winning ball games. So the way the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen is used, I think, is a huge, huge thing to pay attention to, because otherwise, they wouldn't stand out with other teams. But again, you can't judge Tampa the way you do other teams. That's for sure.
Well, I did see a question that came in a little bit ago asking about what are my thoughts on the Atlanta Braves, and I'd like to spoil it here, but to answer John Suggs' question, the Atlanta Braves are my top bullpen in baseball going into 2021. I know that might be a shock to some, but you just look at the guys and what those arms were able to deliver. We talked a lot about the Braves last week, I should say, and how they were able to get through the postseason with surprisingly good starting pitching. But that relief core, man, they just lock stuff down. Like Will Smith, Chris Martin, AJ Minter, Luke Jackson, Tyler Matzek. A lot of those guys were the reason the Braves were able to hang on and win a lot of those games in October. I know we touched on Matzek a little bit last week, Rich, and just his comeback from the yips, being unable to throw strikes, and came up throwing 96, 97 on a national audience in October. What more could you ask than that?
And also a guy like Bryce Wilson, who's probably going to be getting a lot of innings out of the bullpen way it looks for this year. Bryce Wilson came in as a spot starter in the playoffs last year and threw like 7 one-hit innings or something like that.
He did.
The guy's got talent. I mean, that's another team that I was considering for this group for sure. And that Atlanta bullpen is gonna need some work, because Drew Smyly is not going to be able to throw a lot of innings. He may be that 5-inning starter and then get him out of there, because you don't want him seeing the other lineup 3 times. Charlie Morton, good starter, but the guy's 37. I realize his elbow got redone, when a few years ago. His elbow's only like 5 years old, but he's still 37 years old. He's coming off a rough year last year, so you got to wonder about him. But the Braves, they're going to rely on that bullpen heavily, I think, and it's a key that they have that kind of depth in it. I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, and I mean, like the Braves, it's just a team that you maybe kind of don't expect to think about when you think of good bullpens, but they won a lot of close games in the playoffs. They used their offense, but a couple of those times teams came back on them, like the Dodgers in Game 2, and they had to have guys get it done. Of course, they had Mark Melancon in 2020, also known as the good home run catcher in the bullpen, when Ozzie Albies hit 2 in a row to him on consecutive nights. But Melancon's elsewhere now. But no, I think that Braves core is still a really good group, and they're going to help win a lot of games there too.
And it's funny you bring up Mark Melancon, because that elsewhere that he is in is the team I picked at least as my number 2. We didn't get that. I picked them at number 2, which is the San Diego Padres. And again, it's going to come down to deployment and depth is how they have it. Right now, their top reliever is Drew Pomeranz, who, when you think about him, you first hear the name Drew Pomeranz, you don't think a big deal about him, because he was a starter for a long time. Well, he didn't do so well as a starter. He's one of those guys that was good the first couple times through a lineup, but he doesn't have the arsenal to be able to go and get guys out 3 and 4 times in a game. So when he moves to the bullpen, his strikeouts per 9 go from about 8.5 to 13. And his ERA goes from 5 to down to low 2s. This guy, 1 inning at a time or so, is absolutely devastating. Now, there's some speculation that he might be the closer. We'll see. If he is, I think he's going to do a fantastic job. And they've got the depth behind him to be able to deal with it. But what I think they're probably end up going to do is use him the same way that Tampa Bay uses Nick Anderson. They're going to bring him in to put out fires when they need it, and just it doesn't matter whether it's the 5th, it doesn't matter if it's the 9th, he's going to be in there to do it. You've got 4 guys in that bullpen that have been closers. Other than that, Mark Melancon being one of them, who's been around. I mean, the guy's closed games for Minnesota or what? No, for the Giants. He's closed games for Atlanta. He's been around, And while he's not a flashy reliever, he gets the job done, and he still does it. You're also looking at Angel Pagan, who was a closer for Tampa. He's closed some in Oakland. Keone Kela, and you're looking at guys who can just walk in after in the 9th inning and do it. So you may never know who's going to close a game for San Diego this year, and I think that's going to be a secret for them. Now, middle innings, they've got a bunch of veterans that have gone in and done the job before. Guys like Dan Altavilla, who was with Seattle, had a bad arm injury. He's come back really strong. He's throwing well. Javi Guerra, also Tim Hill, and Matt Stram. So they've got guys who can come in and bridge those middle innings as well. You're talking about a bullpen that's going to be 8 or 9 deep in some cases. So that's going to be a little scary, and you never know who you're going to see. You absolutely never know who you're going to see coming out of that pen. So I think once they get that down, once they get how they're going to use everybody and how it's going to work, I think it's a huge deal, and the San Diego bullpen is going to be real tough. Okay, John Suggs also chiming in here. He said the Mets have a good rotation and another team that will shock some people at the Nationals and White Sox. Yeah, we've talked about the Nationals and White Sox the last couple of weeks. And, yeah, for sure. The Mets, I considered the Mets, for this list as well. They were very close. I like I don't care what anybody says. I like Edwin Diaz as a reliever because when he's dialed in mentally, nobody can touch him. He's a sub-2 ERA, and he's blowing guys away at a 14, Ks per 9. It's just a matter of how he's comfortable, whether he's ready to go. He has his good years and his bad years. He's due for a really good year. He's going to have I think he's going to have a fantastic year for the Mets because he's dialed in, and I think he's going to be able to pitch there. But they've signed Trevor May. They've got Dylan Betances. They got guys like that. I mean, they got another guy that we've seen, Castro. Guy we saw in Colorado or here in Albuquerque for a while. Miguel Castro. I mean, he's turned out to be a pretty doggone good relief pitcher in the big leagues. So the Mets, they're up there, and I think that bullpen's going to have a lot to do with how Seth Lugo comes back from injury and is able to pitch, because it looks like their starting rotation is good, so they can have Lugo concentrate on being in the bullpen. And there's another guy who could be a fireman like the other guys we were talking about, Joe.
Yeah, I like Lugo and also Trevor May. I think that was a really underrated signing. That guy's kind of a sinker ball, ground ball specialist, and we saw it in Minnesota for a couple of years, kind of a guy able to come in, not very flashy, but get you out of jam, get outs. And I think that's a basic point of bullpens around all Major League Baseball right now. It's great to have guys that can come and strike out the side on 11 pitches to close out a game, but isn't the main objective of pitching, you just want to get guys out? Does it really matter if it's a punch out or if you get 3 ground outs in a row? Yeah, I think if you're getting those outs and you can be a reliable reliever, that's huge come September and October when you're in the heat of it and you need to win ball games if your team's in it.
Yeah, with all the metrics that are out there in the game right now, all the analytics, nobody does analytics on favorable contact. Everybody does the strikeouts and everybody does the exit velocity and the launch angle and all that stuff. But there are guys out there who produce favorable contact with their pitching all the time. I mean, there's a reason why the shifts work, because these guys can put the pitches where they want and make the guys hit them where they want. And I think that's really huge when it comes to a guy like Trevor May, for sure. So there you go, everybody. There's our bullpens, top bullpens of the season coming in. Joe likes the Atlanta Braves. I like the Tampa Bay Rays. Man, wouldn't that be a great World Series coming up again?
It almost was, and maybe it will be in the future.
Yeah, we'll see. Now, we're going to transition a little bit here. And, Joe and I being like minor league lifers now, we were interested to see the rules changes coming in there, Joe. And these are all experimental rules changes that they're putting into all levels of the minor leagues, different rules at different levels. And, there's a few of them there that you go, oh, okay, yeah, like the AAA, ones that we'll see a lot of. AAA, they're going to the 18-inch square bases rather than the 15. And there's a lot of people who think, that's not going to make much of a difference or anything like that. But, it gives a fielder a little bit more distance from a runner. And I think, to me, that's the big difference. There's more base for the runner to get to, but I think you're going to have less guys getting wiped out. Fewer second basemen with their backs to the double play, waiting to make the play. I think you're going to have fewer guys there getting wiped out. I think you're going to have fewer first basemen getting stepped on. Because when you think about it, for the first base bag, that bag is now 3 inches farther out. When you think about it, and that's a big reach for a first baseman. That's all. 3 inches is about half the width of a human foot, or maybe even more than half the width of a human foot. So I think you're going to have fewer first basemen getting stepped on, that kind of stuff. What do you think, Joe?
I think that's a good way to look at it, because I know there's been a lot said about the changes in baseball and kind of the politics of things lately, but still player safety has to be a priority. And if you look at it like that, to limit the collisions at bases, to limit the risk of injury for base runners, I think it's a good thing. And it's just going to lead to, players able to stay healthy for the most part, especially for the minor leaguers in this case. I know a lot of the guys who we're going to see in AAA this year, they probably did get to the big leagues at some point in 2020, whether it was the alternate site or taxi squad or just to get some work in here and there because of the really weird year. But for the guys that haven't really played in over a year, you're always risking injury when you come back to any athletic competition after that long being out of the saddle. So I think it's good. Maybe it'll help some base runners kind of ease more to things, especially guys like, that just really like to be aggressive on the bases. Like, think blast to the past a little bit, D. Gordon or Billy Hamilton or even Malik Smith. You still have those guys here, Kevin Kiermaier. I know we're not going to see those guys in the minor leagues, but I'm saying players like them that are aggressive and want to take risks on the bases, maybe it'll make it a little more easy for them when they're getting back into the groove of playing baseball every day.
Yep. And now we come to my favorite one, the switch that's going to be made in AA. All right. And that's a shift rule. They're limiting shifts now. Okay. And I'm a big proponent of the shift of, if you're going to hit it there, that's me. If you're going to hit it there, I should be able to stand there. That's the way it should be. Okay. I don't care if you can put all 9 guys standing in short right field. Okay. That's the way you can deploy it. There's no rule that says these guys got to stand anywhere there. The only 2 guys that are limited on the field as to where they can be are the pitcher and the catcher. That's it. When it comes right down to it, okay, now they want to do this experimental rule where, okay, all 4 infielders have to have their spikes on the dirt when the pitch is delivered. Okay. Why? Okay, if I want to take my third baseman and put him out there in short right field, to snag those line drives because your guy does nothing but pull the ball, why shouldn't you be able to do that? If he's not a good enough hitter to be able to go out there and take a pitch that's over the middle and take it to an open hole on the right or on the left side of the infield, why is he out there? Okay, if he can do one thing, why is he out there? That just makes me kind of crazy when I do this kind of stuff. All right, so I think the shift rule, and the thing is, they're talking about in the second half of the year, they may make it so you can only have 2 infielders on either side of second base, which is absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
absolutely nuts. Now, there's people that complain about analytics, that analytics has taken over the game. Oh, yeah, they're going to do that. So what do? You limit the shifts to be able to allow the analytics-driven hitters to be able to do what they want to do. You take away the ability of a defense to stand there and say, okay, this is where you got to hit the ball somewhere else. You got to show me you can do that. And they just, to me, I hope this rule never makes it to Major League Baseball, because I think you should be able to stand wherever you want to on defense. You just cannot do that.
Yeah, I think the shift has really added a lot to the game of baseball. At first, when you started to see it more like 5, 6, 7 years ago, starting to evolve, I kind of didn't know how I felt about it. I might have been on the ban the shift bandwagon for a little bit, but really it's probably just because my team, whoever I was watching, the Dodgers or whoever else I might have been rooting for in a game, had a lot of hits taken away from them by the shift. So I was just conditioned not to like it for a while. But the more and more I watch it, just the more fascinating of an element it gives to the game of baseball. Like, you talk about a team like the Tampa Bay Rays, for instance, and I remember this watching the replay of Game 4 of the World Series last night. There's a ground ball on the left side of the infield where the shortstop normally plays, and I had to almost correct Joe Buck or John Smoltz because I realized that's not Willy Adames. As the second baseman Brandon Lau fielding it at the shortstop position and throwing across for the out because that's what they do. We talked about the Rays last week. That's their defensive positioning and their strategy. And where they think you guys going to hit a ball, they want to shift guys around. And really, I think that's fine. I mean, heck, you look at the Padres. They had Manny Machado, who's their third baseman. They had him playing in the 3-4 hole in the shift, and he goes out and makes a catch of a ball down the right field line. It's just phenomenal. And I think the shift has provided more reasons to love baseball more than hate it. So, yeah, can't say I'm a fan of this. It's probably something I'd have to see in person or at least on MILB.TV a little bit to really get an understanding of it. But judging this book by its cover, I don't know how I like that one either.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan at all. Not a fan at all. If you're smart enough to keep track of where guys are hitting the ball, and then you put your defense where it is they hit it, okay, nobody would ever shift on Tony Gwynn. No. You'd be crazy to put a shift on Tony Gwynn or Rod Carew or George Brett or all these guys from the past. Don Mattingly. Who would ever shift on Don Mattingly? All right. It doesn't make any sense at all to be able to do stuff like that. Those hitters aren't around anymore because all they're talking about is pull the ball, launch angle, exit velocity. That's all they want to hear about. And you know what? Take that away. Make them hit the ball. Okay? Make them do it. I don't care if they're going to pitch you inside. Bunt the ball down the third baseline. Nobody's there. Well, the one thing that destroys all the defensive analytics is base runners, because base runners disrupt everything, especially the guys that get on there with speed. So, you know, that's what they need to get. They need to get over with. Leave the shift as it is. Let people shift. Let them stand wherever they want to. If your first baseman wants to go out in center field, make them take the first baseman's mitt off and give them a regular glove and he can stand in center field. Who cares? You know, who cares? If they're playing their defense there, they know something that we don't. Ugh. Okay, I'm done.
Good job.
All right. No heart palpitations or anything like that. All right. So also in high A ball, this is going to be an interesting one, I think, because in high A ball now, they are telling pitchers that they have to step off the rubber to throw to first. Okay. No more of that spin move or anything like that. No more of the left-handers, you know, lurching up and holding their foot up or whatever they're going to do and going over. If you're going to throw to first, you have to step off the rubber to throw first. Or to throw there. I mean, that's a little different.
Yeah, no, it's just an adjustment that, you know, I think with just because pitchers are so creatures of habit and they're used to doing things the way they have for their whole lives, going back to Little League, it's going to take a while, but luckily there is spring training. I know hopefully a lot of the lower level minor leaguers are going to get to go to spring training once the big leaguers and AAA break camp, you know, here in a couple of weeks. They're doing that to limit gatherings, and I think it's a good thing, you know, limit the spread. That's what we all want to do. But once the guys get to spring training, they have their opportunity to work on that there. That way, because they probably have a pretty good idea of where they're being assigned to. So they can kind of work with the new rules, kind of manipulate things as they wish and figure out whatever's best for them. So it can be an easier transition period once the season starts that week of May 4th, hopefully.
Yeah, now you go to the lower levels of A-ball. They're going to be limited to 2 pickoff attempts per plate appearance. So if a batter's up there, you're going to throw it first twice, or any base twice for that matter. You know, that I think is going to be good because you don't get those guys who are paranoid about the base runners, okay, and throw over there 14 times. You know, you and I both know that sitting at a ball game and watching that is just like, you know, your eyes start to roll. Yeah, I know. So that's a good rule, I think. And then there's one that I'm really excited to see. You know, we have seen a 30-second pitch clock and a 20-second pitch clock. Now, in what is it? The West, low A West.
Yeah, I'm still learning all the new names.
Yeah, 15-second pitch clock. What do you think of that, Joe? 15
seconds. That's tough. That's different than what we've been used to in the minor leagues, but that just means, hey, they want to speed up the pace of play. They want to get things going. So guys are just going to have to get back on and pitch. And that's all about having a short memory, forgetting the last pitch, or just staying in a groove. And everyone likes it. Your defense likes it. Broadcasters like it. Front office does. Basically anyone in the ballpark when your pitcher's working quick. And also, I do like the the idea of only 2 pickoff attempts per plate appearance. Now, I don't want to sound uneducated, but sometimes if you're watching a game, especially playoff baseball in October, and the guy throws over 5, 6 times to first base, it's like, okay, we understand why you're doing it. You're trying to hold him on, but we kind of do want to see the action. So I feel like when there's that many pickoff attempts, really no one likes it, except maybe the base runner. It's giving him more energy to try and steal. But hey, too, you got to pick your poison. You got to pick the spots that's best to throw over there. And who knows, maybe it could lead to some more stolen bases, which I think also is a lost art, but it's very exciting for the game of baseball still. And I want to see some more of it.
Well, that you got, and as a pitcher, one of the things, I mean, the guy that I listened to most was a guy that I got to meet a few times when I was a young ball player, and that was Ray Miller. He was the pitching coach for the Orioles and Earl Weaver and all those legendary pitching teams that they had there, and also World Series winning manager. And that guy, he had it broken down very simply. He said, work fast, throw strikes, change speeds, and his fourth rule was hold runners close. But you don't hold them by throwing over there all the time. Part of that is varying the amount of time that you go to pitch. One time you do it, you stand there for 2 seconds and then pitch. The next time you stand there 6 seconds and pitch. And you vary that delivery time. And I don't think there's enough of that going on there. In fact, I think that's a skill that's left to pitchers to do on their own. I don't even know if it's taught anymore. And I think that's a lost art when you get down to it, is that you need to be able to vary the amount of time for delivery when you're pitching from the stretch like that. So to me, that's a rule that's going to force teams into better instruction and better development when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, I think it might just be another fundamental that's a lost art, but we'll see if it makes its way back into the game. But the thing is, all these rule changes in baseball, let's just think of it for the average fan. Like I mentioned last week, especially in minor league baseball, they're going to be so excited to finally get back to the ballpark after, what is it, almost 20 months of inactivity due to the pandemic and the lost season, that I don't think your average fan is really going to be noticing this stuff. They're just going to be so overjoyed to be back at the ballpark, even if they are a big fan. I think there are little minor tweaks in the grand scheme of things that baseball's trying to work out. Now, we mentioned that we don't like the shift idea very much, but still, it's all about tweaking and trying to see what's best. And I'm not necessarily going to be a proponent and say they should go ahead and do the odd shifting, but for some of these other things like pitchers, it's just little things you're experimenting with. It's like it's a control group. And a lot of the times in the NBA and NFL and NHL, they try some of these others, these rules out in developmental leagues, especially like in the G League or minor league hockey. And it's something you're trying to do to, I don't necessarily want to say grow the game, but see if you can change it, make any little tweaks along the way. And if it doesn't work, you can always do away with it as soon as you started it, basically. I don't see any problem with that.
Yep. And in low A ball, and as our friend John lets us know, low A ball in the East, they're calling it umpire assist, for the automatic strike zone. It's basically one step away from robo ump. And they're really going to put that into play now. The umpire is going to have an earpiece, and it's going to just have a little beep if the thing detects a strike. And we'll see. I mean, to me, it's less of an adjustment for hitters and pitchers and a huge adjustment for the umpires and how it's going to be done. So I think that's it's something that they've been talking about for a long time, and now people are going to be able to see it in action.
Yeah, and hey, this might be a little bit of an odd thing to think of, but we are still in the pandemic and we still are in the time of social distancing. So maybe it leads you to think about the future a little bit. And if this robo umpiring thing does work, maybe it's in the future that, okay, you don't really need umpires. What are we going to do in the next couple of years to try to limit the amount of people on the field during a baseball game? And it might seem pretty small, but a lot of the umpires in Major League Baseball, I mean, some of them are a little bit up there in age and they've had some health concerns. So if you can limit their exposure and help keep them safe, I know the umpires love being there too and they want to be at the ballpark, but it's all about health and safety right now. And I think in a really odd way, that could also tie into what we're talking about with this rule change.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of factors to it, but there are changes to the game that I think are good and inevitable, especially when they involve technology. Absolutely, positively, when you can make an advent of technology that improves the game, do it. And I don't think I need to say anything other than Angel Hernandez to anybody. that wants to be opposed to the robo ump. Okay, trust me. I think that's all you need to hear because there's a lot of complaints about that guy and other umpires as well. And we've seen guys. Umpire. Everybody thinks the umpire is the same every night. They have good nights and bad nights, just like ball players do. And you can sit there. I mean, we sit there in the press box before and saying like, "Whoa, okay, better nail that plate down for him tonight because the plate seems to be moving inning to inning." That kind of stuff, So I think the umpire assist is going to help because it's going to be the ultimate in consistency.
Yeah, it's going to be like anything. It's going to take some adjusting and getting used to, but like anything in baseball, once you settle into a rhythm, you could see things start to smooth out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so we've got that kind of covered there. It'll be interesting to watch some of the rule changes and the impact that they have this year. Now, we've got a few minutes left here. Always looking for your comments here on A Hardball Life. I'm Rich Daniels, Joe Traub with me here. We're talking, all kinds of good stuff for baseball. And Joe, you've got a couple other points, a couple other things you want to bring up tonight. Go for it.
Yeah, I got to throw you we talk in baseball a lot about pitches, right? And curveball's a pretty typical pitch. Just want to throw you a couple, maybe a couple things you weren't expecting. So I've got to ask you a question here if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
What do you think? And I know you're like we mentioned, we're the baseball junkies. You watched the entire 2020 postseason. What would you say a couple of your most memorable moments were that just stick out to you? From watching all that action, even without fans in the stands, but still just really, what was an unforgettable month of postseason baseball?
To me, it was the expanded format.
Yeah.
To be able to get to it, and then wow, there's all these games. And I had people all over the place. They were complaining about the expanded playoffs and everything like that. And they thought, oh, this is terrible and everything. And then I would ask them, are you going to watch the games? And inevitably the answer was, of course I'm going to watch the games. Well, then shut up. I don't want to hear from you. If you're going to watch the games and you're going to enjoy it, why are you complaining about it? Okay. It's those people that are stuck to tradition too much that I think, I'm all for traditions if they're healthy and if they're good. All right. But, it's the same thing that you heard when they first expanded the playoffs back in the 1970s. Okay. Oh, we're going to have a championship series now because we've got a West Division and East Division in each one. Okay. So we're going to do that. Okay. And then the division series came up. Okay. Well, we don't like that or anything like that. But you know what? It's more baseball and it's playoff baseball. Whether you like the wild card or not, do you watch the games? Of course you do. Do you enjoy them? Most of the time, as long as it's not a blowout or something. Okay. But yeah, the expanded format, just having more playoff baseball was great. It's the same thing they did in other sports and found real success with it. And I think this is one of the few things that translates to baseball from other sports really well. It gives teams the opportunity to go out there. I think we remember, I forget what year it was, but when the Rockies were the hot team in the playoffs.
2007.
Yeah, 2007. And they just rolled through as the hot team. And then they had to wait 5 days because they smoked through the National League Championship Series, and the American League Series went longer. And they lost all that momentum, and it was just done for the series. They just didn't have it anymore. All right. You're not going to get that as often because you're going to be playing more baseball on more days. You're going to have fewer days off to be able to go in there and do it. You're going to have a day off for travel, and then you're going to play consecutive days. And then you're going to have a day off, maybe two, between series, and then you're going to go right to the next series. And I think it gives opportunity for the hot team as well because it's as much fun to watch a team that's hot as it is for a team that's really good. So to me, that's what the expanded playoffs was a big deal. I just enjoy being able to turn on a game. Okay, 4:00 in the afternoon, bam. Okay, there's a game. And it's playoff baseball. I just love that opportunity. It's like what we're facing coming up this week for college basketball. Sure. You're going to be able to turn 11:30 at night. You're going to be able to click on there and go, wow, there's a basketball game on. This is cool. It's Miami of Ohio and Valparaiso or somebody. You have no idea what's going to be on there. And it's just that the more opportunity to view it and enjoy it. That's what I really love.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those couple days in late September, early October. I think ESPN even had the rights to it. They dubbed it as the Fall Frenzy. And really it was one of those, I think it was that Wednesday. There were 8 playoff games. There were, 4 in the NL, 4 in the AL. And it was basically the March Madness of playoff baseball. There was a game on from 10 o'clock in the morning until midnight. And it was fantastic. I loved it. And, before the season, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not necessarily a fan of the 16-team playoff format, but I'm not going to complain about it because we were deprived of so much baseball, not getting to watch it from March until July, that I wasn't going to be upset about it. I was going to embrace the teams that maybe shouldn't have made it, but then you look at a team like the Marlins that a lot of people said, oh, they're only in because of COVID, shortened year, and they didn't deserve it in the expanded format. But the Marlins went in and they swept the Chicago Cubs in 2 games. They held them to 1 run. That was fun because, I was still rooting for the Marlins at that point to keep that crazy streak alive that they had never lost a postseason series. Unfortunately, it came to an end when they lost to the Braves. But that was a good one. And even seeing a team like the Cincinnati Reds or the Chicago White Sox, the White Sox would have been in a normal year anyways, and I think they're going to be in this upcoming season. But no, it was some good baseball all around and really just maybe helped pivot some fans back into liking baseball if they were maybe turned away by all the politics and money and arguing that went on last spring and the early part of the summer. But another thing you brought up, Rich, the off days. And the interesting part is we didn't see a whole lot of that in the 2020 postseason because I think it was for only the 3rd time ever. Both league championship series went the distance, went 7 games. The Rays had to hold off the Astros and fend them off in Game 7 after they almost blew a 3-0 lead. And then the Dodgers came back from 3-1 down to beat the Atlanta Braves and advance to the World Series. And, the Dodgers, they won that series on Sunday, and they had to turn around and start the World Series on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the Rays played that ALCS out in San Diego, so they had a travel day to come to Arlington, Texas. So that's really only 1 day off in between games. And at that point, they're having to work out and get their pitching rotation and bullpen aligned. So that kind of goes back to the point that we made a little bit before about how the Rays, and in case of a couple of games, especially Game 4, the Dodgers bullpen tired a bit in that World Series. And that's completely understandable, only having 1 or 2 days off in between a very emotional league championship series and the World Series. That can be rough on the guys if they don't get the rest because pitchers have this routine. They have to go in the hot tub or the cold tub. They have to do their sprints. They have to do the bleachers. They have to ice. It's not just, okay, I pitched, I'm done, I'll come back again tomorrow or the next day. It's about like a process that involves many steps and to making sure their body is good to go for the next day because, face it, that's just how it works for a lot of professional athletes.
Well, I mean, you think about pitchers, especially like bullpen guys. These guys throw 95, 100 miles an hour. You don't really think about the stress that puts on your whole body to be able to do that because you don't just throw 100 miles an hour with your arm. You throw it with your whole body. That's everything clicking and getting that velocity going down there. Or you think of just the grind of travel. A lot of people don't realize these guys will get done a game at 11 o'clock at night sometimes, and then they'll get on a plane and they'll fly and they'll arrive in the city that they're going to play in the next one at 6 a.m., go to sleep, go to the ballpark at maybe 4 in the afternoon, because they're coming off a travel, schedule, and go out and play. And you see these guys, you think they're just like you, getting up in the morning at 7 o'clock or whatever and having breakfast. No, the travel schedule for these guys, and especially it gets even tougher when you get down into the minor leagues, because the travel schedules are a little more jumbled, and the travel, the means of travel aren't exactly the same as you get in a lot of the big leagues there. So, I mean, it's tough to be able to look at the wear and tear that these guys face. Now, there you go, Joe. He sees you as a Rockies fan. Are we Rockies fans, Joe?
Well, I support them, but on this show, am I allowed to actually say my favorite team? Because this is starting another new topic.
Go ahead.
Got to say, I am a proud Los Angeles Dodgers fan, but I also do support the Rockies because, living in Albuquerque right now, they are the AAA affiliate here, and I've enjoyed watching them for years, and I don't want to be that baseball fan that necessarily hates other division rivals in your division because, I think it's fun and all to have nemesis, but sometimes it gets to the point like, why? Why do you hate them? Is it because someone told you, like in my case, a Dodgers fan, that you have to hate the Giants or Rockies simply because they're in your region, they're in your division? No, I think you can have friendly banter with the fans and whatever, but you can still support them. Don't necessarily root for them, especially if they're playing your team or, you need them to lose for divisional purposes. But I think you can always get behind supporting a couple good teams and having a friendly rivalry where it's not all, we have to get into a benches clearing brawl with this team tonight. In the case of the Yankees and Red Sox, like you've seen so many times. No, I don't like to think of teams as hated rivals, with a few exceptions, maybe in other sports, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about baseball, and I think the more friendly and fun-natured it is, that is a good thing. And if you could pop that question about the Rockies up again, I'll answer it.
I mean, it's pretty good. I'll throw it on there. I'll tell you that just by contact, I'm a Rockies fan. I have to be. I've watched for the last 7 years. I've watched their minor league talent come rolling through the AAA level. And we were talking about this the other day. My the first year that I saw the Rockies come in was that outfield of Mike Tauchman, who is, a guy who's been a great bench player for the Yankees the last few years.
Good.
And then they had another fellow, Steven Cardullo was another fellow, came out of independent ball to be able to, and went right to AAA and really did well and actually went up to the big club. And then Jordan Patterson was another guy. He's gotten some major league time with the Reds and some other teams, I think. Jordan Patterson actually turned out being the all-time Albuquerque Isotopes leader in home runs for the franchise. So we've seen a lot of stuff like that. And John Slugg's question about seeing where the Rockies are right now, I think that's a valid thing because that's been thrown around a lot since the Arenado trade, and his situation with the team has been really difficult the last couple of years. Because his burning desire to be a winner, to play on a winning team. And the Rockies just haven't, for whatever, reasons, haven't been able to deliver in a lot of ways. So, I mean, are we, looking at a rebuild coming, or are we buying what they're saying? Are we drinking the Kool-Aid when they say, oh, we're going to shock the world, even though we're in the same division as the Dodgers and Padres?
Yeah, it could be tough sailing for a while. And, I do feel sorry for a lot of Rockies fans because Nolan Arenado is a fantastic player. He's definitely one, maybe, I don't even want to say top two, maybe the best player that franchise has ever had. He's so much fun to watch at third base, one of the pure, truly great hitters in the game, and St. Louis got a good one. But Colorado does have a lot of good young talent on that team. You look at a guy like Garrett Hampson, he had a pretty good 2020 season. Josh Fuentes, who was actually Nolan Arenado's cousin. Fuentes plays some of the best defensive third base, you can see out there, especially got to see him in AAA. And
in 2018, he was the Pacific Coast League MVP.
Right.
And he did it with hitting, 18 home runs?
Something like that.
He hit the league with 18 home runs. And the reason why, and I can tell you this because Joe and I sat there and watched this every night. We saw ridiculous defense from Josh Fuentes every night. It was like watching Arenado. It really was. Because I likened him to, I sat there, I think I even said to you several times, Matt Chapman. He reminds me of Matt Chapman.
Yeah.
The best third baseman. If you would have taken what he did in that 2018 season defensively and put it on any major league field, he would have been a top 5 third baseman in the Major League Baseball. And now they've got him playing first base. I personally don't think he's going to last at first base. They're going to move him to third base, and at least defensively, they're not going to miss Arenado so much.
No. Yeah, once you put him over there. And, of course, you still have Trevor Story. Story's worked his way up into one of the maybe top 15, 20 players in the game right now. That guy can hit. And, I think Colorado fans, I know there's been a lot saying that they might, take a bit of a step back this year, but Story's still worth the price of admission because that guy can hit. He's your basically Tulo 2.0. I think he's even a little bit better than Tulowitzki was.
Yeah, I without a doubt. Trevor Story is the story, and if they can get him to re-sign, if they can get him to be the cornerstone of a rebuild and get him to go there, that would be huge. Joe, we are out of time here on Hardball Life. We got other programming coming up here. We got the wrestling fans are lining up, to get between the ropes here. So we've got to get going here. But yet another great job on Hardball Life. We got to get going here. Thank you, sir, and we will be back next week. Hopefully, we're going to have ourselves a very special guest next week. We'll see if we can get one on there. But for Joe Traub, I'm Rich Daniels. This is a Hardball Life on the All Sports All Play Network. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics never the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace up the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays. Hard sports all plays. Network. We on top of our game. Hard sports all plays. Hard sports all plays.